Here we go. My name's Todd.
This is Cathy.
Welcome back to another episode of Zen Parenting Radio. This is podcast number 715. Why listen to Zen Parenting Radio? Because you'll feel outstanding. And always remember our motto, which is this: the best predictor of a child's well-being is a parent's self-understanding. Usually, Cathy and I record and then we come up with a title. But today we have a title.
Yeah.
And it's called Nurturing Our Kids' Spiritual Growth and Self-Understanding.
Can I tell a secret?
Sure. Hold on. Before you do that,
okay.
You know what I'm about to do, don't you?
I think you're going to play sticks, but that's... I had this long sentence of what I wanted to talk about, and I put it into AI, into chat. GPT?
Yeah, whatever.
And that's the sentence. Actually, it didn't give me that exact sentence. This is what I've learned about Chat GPT. I don't use it that often, but when I do, like for the title of this podcast, it's very formal. Mm. It's very Mr. Roboto. That works perfect because it's nobody. I don't think people talk like that.
You could tell it saying, make this less formal.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, and it will do that.
Well, why doesn't it just relax up front?
Maybe it doesn't know Cathy Adams.
Well, it needs to chill because it's like, nevertheless, I'm like, relax. Like, and so what I like about it is that it'll give me a kind of sentence and then I cut it down. It's kind of like getting a ball of clay and then you make it into something.
Well, and you'll get better and better at molding the clay. And what I mean by that is telling it like, make this half as long. Or make this twice as long, or make this from a Shakespearean standpoint, or make this from a J.D. Salinger standpoint, and it will do all that for you.
That's really interesting.
It's totally creepy. It's going to change our worlds. I know everybody's sick of hearing about it, or at least a lot of people are, but it is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I will say this, like when I'm writing something for myself, I don't like it. Because you lose your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
So I don't think, and again, I know marketing will use it. I know advertising will use it. But as a writer, the whole joy of being a writer is finding the language and figuring it out yourself.
Yeah.
At least it is for me. If somebody is doing it because they're just trying to get through it, but I like the idea of it's a creative endeavor. So to have AI do it for you defeats the purpose.
But the thing is, you'll be able to use it to help you tune your voice with more precision. So it's not like you're going to be like, rewrite this and then I'll copy and paste it.
Okay.
You're going to rewrite it, take little parts of it.
Yeah.
Say that sounds good. But instead of doing this, I'm going to do that. Like, it's just going to be another tool in your toolbox.
Yeah. I hope it's just another tool. Cause I'm sure when we first got, Google or, Yahoo or whatever we were using, Ask Jeeves, was that it would people, I'm sure we were like, oh my God, we can get information from anywhere. So I hope we can just not,
we need to
harm the world with this. That's Jeeves. I think that went under.
Yes.
Okay. So go ahead.
So real quick, I do want to just highlight your Zen Parenting moment, which you titled Give Yourself a Break. And I think it's, some of it was inspired by a book you're reading called The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. Anything you want to share? So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Cathy does these really quick, like 1-minute reads, Zen Parenting moments. And if you haven't already subscribed to them, it comes in your inbox every Friday. Just scroll down the show notes and it's a click of a button. So.
Yeah, thank you. I think I wrote about it last week because I was having like grief spurts. Mm-hmm. And I'm not I kind of was explaining this to you on a walk the other day. When I don't feel good or I'm grieving or I'm sad or I'm angry, I get frustrated that I am. And then I have to come back to the awareness that the whole point of feeling sad is that you feel sad. So you can't be annoyed that you're feeling sad because that's what sadness is. Yeah. There's a really kind of mindful, acceptance to it. I was going to say like, I have to be more Buddha-like about it because you can't be like, no, I'm sad, but actually I'm happy. Like that it's
be sad.
But when you feel sad, the nature of sadness is energetic drain. Mm-hmm. And so that's not a good feeling. So
comfortable.
So I think what I came to, my middle place was give yourself a break. I was just like, don't think this is always and ever, and just be like, you don't should yourself. I'm not a fan of the shoulds, shoulding. What are you gonna play? Jeez.
Give me a break, cause you deserve it. It's time I made it to the top. Give me a break.
Did you like this show, sweetie?
Of course I did.
Nell Carter.
Nell Carter. Yeah, and this was the original, because remember, as the seasons went on, this opening got a little more heightened,
a little more fancy.
Sweetie,
don't get fancy.
But yes, I loved Nell Carter.
Sorry, I disrupted your train of thought. I just, maybe people remember to give themselves a break if they listen to the "Give Me a Break" theme song today.
It was, Nell Carter.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead.
So we have this thing called Ask Us Anything, and people are starting to use it.
When you say we have this thing, the more information to offer there is on, if you go to our resources page, zenparentingradio.com/.
In the show notes, just click on the link.
Just scroll down. If you're on our website, you can go to resources. But anyway, there is a page where you can either email us a question or you can use the speak pipe and actually ask a question. So if you're more of an audio person, just say it to us. And if you are,
I think I put a limit on it of like 30 or 60 seconds.
Oh, okay.
And I did that on purpose just because I want to play these on the podcast, and it's so easy for us to get into a lot of background story. And I think it's less, I don't know. I think people will tune out more quickly. So you do have to keep it tight, which is good.
Tight.
Bees hang tight. But this person wrote it via typing on their keyboard.
Not typewriter?
No.
Okay.
Hi, Cathy and Todd. I have two sons, 8 and 11. And ever since they're past the toddler age, it's been much easier for me to lose patience with them. And it's been very difficult for me to control my temper when they do something wrong. I'm noticing that both of my sons started having similar type of temper. I want to ask if you have some ideas on how I can quickly do a quick reset before I just start screaming at my kids, because it's been very difficult, especially toward my tween age son. I really don't want my kids to also have that quick temper as well. And I'm really not being a good role model. Thank you so much. So I'll jump in real quick.
Okay.
She writes this with a little bit of self-awareness in that she's noticing a pattern of her inability to kind of calm herself down and her sons. So I just want to and I also want to normalize this. You're losing your temper at your 8 and 11-year-old children. Welcome to the club. It's not an easy thing. These kids are put on this earth to, help us learn about ourselves. But sometimes I feel like they're here to make our lives miserable.
Well, yeah, I don't think that's not why they're here.
It's like a byproduct.
Yeah, it can be a byproduct.
So I just first want to honor whoever wrote this and say the fact that you're connecting these dots is really good. My best hack, for lack of a better term, is to take a breath. Just simply take a breath. And it's such a, I don't know, not helpful idea.
Well, can I ask you something? Because I'm always doing this to Todd, because he will use kind of he'll share a tool, but do you really use that, and does it work? And when's the last time it worked? Rather than just share, take a breath.
Sometimes I use it.
Yeah.
And the idea of it working, I would say, I don't know, I'd have to keep track of it.
Well, just think of the last time, instead of go through your whole history.
Yesterday, my dad came over.
Yeah. Okay.
I wasn't ready.
There you go. Good job.
He came over 3 hours early for Father's Day. And I think I swore first. I curse word. He's here already. And I took a breath, sat in my chair for another 10, 15 seconds, and then got up and greeted him.
Yeah.
Now, I think that helped a bit. I still was kind of annoyed, but it decreased the amount of reactive energy I was going through in that moment. It didn't eliminate it.
Right.
It just helped it a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people have a meditation practice. Sweetie, yours has been strong for a long time. Mine comes and goes. And right now I'm not doing much formal meditation practice, but I'll tell you, it's more important to be able to put a breathing exercise into practice when a stimulus happens than it is to sit on your cushion for 20 minutes in the morning.
Yeah.
And I think by sitting on your cushion 20 minutes in the morning will help
your lifting weights,
your ability to do it. So maybe if I would have had a formal meditation practice in the last 6 months, I may have been able to really kind of chill out. But but I still chilled out a bit. So anyways, that's what I got. What do you got?
Yeah. Well, I think you're, hitting one of the most important things is the ability to respond rather than react, which is what you said. And I think I'll connect this to what we were talking about with my Zen parenting moment is that I think sometimes we'll be like, I'm frustrated. How do I keep from being frustrated? And I don't think you can.
No, yeah, right.
I think that frustration is just what it is. It's what do I do with it? So I think a lot of parents beat themselves up because they have a feeling. They're like, can you believe I got frustrated? I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Or that you got angry or that you were impatient. It's, do you notice you're there? And do you, like Todd, kind of take a breath, swear, whatever, and then choose from that point? You can't, I don't know if we as humans can eliminate certain feelings when they come up because they're not just about the moment. They're about history. They're about fear. They're about things that are really human and necessary. They're like, we need them. And, a few things that I was thinking of when you were originally reading this, Todd, is she's like, I feel different now that they're 8 and 11 versus when they were toddlers. I think that's common. And it can go the other way too. It can flip flop. I think it has a lot to do with how we identify and relate to our kids. I think I started when my kids were a lot younger. I could be a little more separate from them because I didn't really remember what it was like to be 3 or 4. Like I had a memory, but I wasn't identifying with them as much. And then when they got to an age that I could really remember myself at that age, I started to over-identify with them. And so things became a little more frustrating to me or concerning, or I hope they don't do this, or I hope they don't turn out like this kid, or I hope they don't do what I did, or I hope they do what I did. So there's a lot more stuff in the mix, like where we're combating not just dealing with the moment or whatever they're doing to frustrate us, but whatever's going on inside of us. So that would be, if this question asker was in front of me, I would say, is there something about pre-adolescence that is a little more triggering? Is there something
maybe a little more familiar? Like maybe she, I assume this is a mom, but maybe it's a dad. I assume maybe something happened around that time in their lives where they started getting into big arguments with their kids, with their parents.
There could be a parent relational thing. There could also be the discomfort with anger that I think sometimes when kids are little, we have, because they're little, we have a little more patience, not always, because again, sometimes our memories can be from that toddlerhood. And so then we have a totally different reaction when they're 8 or 11. So this is very individual. I want to make sure I'm saying that, but sometimes we can be a little more patient with little kids. And then when they get older, we start to think they should just know. And our anger comes out a little more where we're like, why do I have to tell you this twice? Or why would you speak to someone that way? And, one of the things as far as like, if you are the person listening to this who asks a question, if you're interested in kind of like what's going on with an 8 or 11-year-old's brain, it might be interesting to read The Whole Brain Child, which is Daniel Siegel's book, Dr. Daniel Siegel. There's other brain books. It's just, I feel like that kind of lays out, here's what's going on brain development wise. Here's what's going on with pre-adolescence. There's a lot of books about pre-adolescent brain. And so you can, instead of think this shouldn't be happening, you're like, well, of course they're having this experience. And of course it's triggering me.
I have one more take before we get into the gist of the show, but I'm in the background. I'm going to go ahead and, this is a song called Just Breathe by Pearl Jam. Got to do that, right, sweetie?
I guess it does fit.
Yeah, it does. Just breathe.
Some teens were making fun of this song the other night. Remember when we were on the deck?
What was their problem?
I don't know, but I think they just, the way that Eddie sings it, they were like,
he's an acquired taste, Eddie Vedder.
Yes.
I just want to remind the person who wrote in that, when we say temper, we're talking about anger, right?
Right. Anger is uncomfortable.
And anger is uncomfortable, but it's also one of the 5 or 4 basic human emotions, and that it's not such a bad thing to let anger out. It just depends on how we're encouraging somebody to express that anger.
And so let's talk about this. Let's talk about your anger first, writer. What should we just call her mom?
Yeah, let's call her mom.
Yeah, and it could be a dad, but so we're assuming, but let's talk about your anger first, Mom. Like anger, what is anger? It tells us when our boundaries are crossed, right? That's what it's there for. That's why it's a message and an arrow. It tells us what to do and where to go. So what boundaries are you feeling are crossed? Are you feeling like you're not sure how to speak with your kids? Are you feeling like they're taking advantage of you? Do you feel like you are over responding and so you're angry with yourself and you're crossing your own boundary? Like you're feeling annoyed at yourself. Like it could be them, it could be you. So anger first, like what is it trying to tell you? And then with their anger, if you could see, this is the thing about, the best predictor of a child's well-being as a parent, self-understanding, is that if you understand your anger, you can talk to them about theirs. You can talk to them about, I get really angry when, and you can tell them your story about, I get really angry when I feel like I'm not heard, or I get really angry when I have to repeat something, or I get really angry when I feel like I'm working real hard and nobody notices. And then you can talk to them about their anger so they can be more thoughtful and knowledgeable. And you may say, well, they're 8 and 11. These things take time. Like telling a kid or helping a kid with their self-awareness doesn't shift their behavior immediately.
Heck no.
It's a building block. And so what you're doing is, instead of just letting it go or getting into a yelling relationship with them or breaking your connection with them because you're constantly frustrated, you're putting in some bricks. It's a building block to help them understand themselves. So by the time their brain really starts developing, they're taking all those things into account.
Well, and they're learning from you one way or another. They're either learning from you on how to express anger from a place that creates more problems, or express anger from a place that reduces problems.
And just to even say to your kids, your boys, anger can be really uncomfortable, can it?
Yeah.
And also to help them differentiate, again, you're raising boys, between anger and other feelings.
Well, and don't forget, anger can sometimes feel good.
Right?
Interesting.
A release.
Letting it out.
Mm-hmm.
So last thing.
But before you play another clip, anger, it can also be a mask for sadness, embarrassment, frustration, fear. So especially with your boys who in society, typically, gender specifically, men can use anger.
We are encouraged to use anger more than any other emotion.
Correct. And so if you can help them kind of slice that up a little bit, so they know they can have access to other emotions as well. So, the way I'll leave this with you, Mom, before Todd plays something, is any kind of experience like this that you're having is an opportunity. It's a doorway. Do we like it? No, of course not.
And are you going to do it perfect every time?
No.
Heck no.
But it's a door. It's like, okay, I get to look at my anger. I get to look at my adolescence. I get to look at them. I get to learn about brain science, and I get to talk to them about feelings.
Breathe in the air, sweetie. Don't be afraid to care.
No
way, man. That's by Pink Floyd. Dave, Roger, and the guys. Speaking of the guys, I am listening to 2 different podcasts right now. One of them is that witchcraft thing, J.K. Rowling, and the other is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia podcast.
Wow, 2 very different.
You cannot come up with 2 more different podcasts to listen to. And maybe at some point, Cathy and I might in the future talk about this J.K. Rowling thing, but not yet. We're not ready.
No, not ready.
Okay, so the title of today's podcast is Nurturing Our Kids' Spiritual Growth and Self-Understanding. Where are we going with this?
So Todd and I have this opportunity to do this interview. I think we're doing it today with another podcast. So they asked us, and it's a more spiritual podcast. It's like Cathy old school, like Cathy, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago when we first started.
Are you saying you're no longer spiritual?
No,
sweetie?
I am. I'm all those things, but it's the books and the things that she was talking about. I was like, oh, that used to, I was actually just talking to my daughter about this. I am still all those things, but I'm older and the world has shifted me into different directions. And so it's not that I let go of those things. I just don't talk about them.
You brought them with you.
I brought them with me. Absolutely. They're rolling in to every other aspect of who I am. I just used to be, if you look back at our shows and I don't even know if you can anymore, like the 100 level, 200 level.
You can go to our website. That's the way to do it. But you can't do it on Spotify or iTunes or anything like that. I
bet at least 1 out of 3 podcasts from the first 3 years of our show was about some kind of spiritual growth, a book I was reading about self-help, which I still do, but it was just deeper. It was like, not deeper. What's the word? It was more intense, right?
Can you give any examples?
That I'd be reading like 3 self-help books at a time. I wasn't paying attention to the news. I wasn't as involved in politics. I was involved in my own spiritual and personal growth.
Well, who's the authors that our interviewer threw out to you that you
she threw out Wayne Dyer, which is an obvious one. That was my first intro when I was 16. She threw out Eben Alexander, which was a guy that had a near-death experience. He was a neurosurgeon himself and then had a near-death experience. So he understood what was going on in the brain. And I just remember his book. I remember all of the interviews. I remember his story, which then led me to Jill Bolte Taylor. I was thinking about her and her stroke of insight, where she had a stroke on one side of her brain and, experience what it's like to not have our more linear, way of thinking and to just be right brainers. And then that led me to all these other super soul things. I was just thinking about how, I bet if I were to look at my syllabus, because I've been teaching college students now for 11 years. If I looked at my syllabus from the first couple of years versus now, it would represent the difference in where I am.
It's the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly. I'm still teaching social work and all of those kind of things, but what are my examples? What are my books I'm suggesting? And I have, because of the way the world has gone and because of the age of my children and because of who I am, you just evolve. I like the word evolve because it's not about that I've changed. I'm just rolling it.
So when I see that we're going to title this Nurturing Our Kids' Spiritual Growth and Self-Understanding, let's just focus on spiritual growth.
Yeah.
So for me, what does that mean? I mean, there's volumes of books written about what spirituality means, right? And then there's a whole faith-based religious thing, which we're not really talking about right now. A lot of people
will say religious dogmatic because spirituality can be faith-based.
Of course. I don't know. When I think of spiritual, I think of, and I believe in spirituality, but I think Cathy's lens is a little bit more clear than mine. When I think of spirituals, I think I was somebody before I showed up. I think I'm going to be somebody after I pass on. And my hope is that I kind of grow and do whatever it is that I'm supposed to do on this earth. And, other people are like, no, you're here when you show up and then you die when you pass on. And that's fine. A lot of people believe a lot of different things, but I think of who was Todd before Todd even showed up, and that may not really connect to spiritual growth, but it's the opposite of what I'm comfortable with. What I'm comfortable with: logical, practical, science, objectivity, and with spiritual, it's a little bit
it's uncertain.
It's so uncertain. So anyways,
well, and I'm a little more uncomfortable with I'm a little more comfortable with uncertainty and mystery, because I think that's really what it's all about. Because, one of my baseline understandings, because it resonated so deeply, which if something resonates super, super, super deeply, it's not just about verifying your point. It's about, I think that it's something, you just know. And when
without having read it in a book, you just
know, you're like, yes, that just feels so correct to me. And Joseph Campbell said that our human brains don't hold the capacity or ability to access life and death. We don't have the hardwiring and to really know for sure. So what that means to me is we get to live in the mystery and the hints of it. It doesn't mean we don't get the hints of it and the connections and the feelings and the heart what's the word? The heart connections. We know, but we can never fully know. That's what I love about it.
Well, and when I hear you say that, for some reason, I just think of stars, because, you see a bazillion stars when you look up in the sky, which is just a tiny fraction of what is out there. And I know that there's no way I can get my arms around the vastness of space.
No, of course not.
In the same way, I don't feel like I can get my arms around the vastness of God, whatever, insert love, whatever, universe. I can't get my arms around that, nor I don't think I'm supposed to.
Well, I think one of the, talking about our topic of conversation for this show, is that something I've always found to be so important in teaching the girls is you are special and you are important, and who you are and who you came into the world as is vital and necessary. We know that because you're here. At the same time, you are tiny, in the big scope of life, and in the universe, you're like not even a speck, right? And so you are the biggest thing and the smallest thing. And you have to live in that paradox of understanding that you're here for a reason. And I don't mean a career reason. I mean, you're supposed to be here. This is your time to be here. At the same time, when things feel heavy and overwhelming, all you have to do is look up at the stars. This is just a moment in time. You are a piece of a big puzzle that you're never going to be able to complete in your lifetime. You're never going to be able to see it done. It's just this big puzzle. And we get to work on it in our lifetime, like listen to it and access it and move with it, but you don't get to be done until you're done, which means you're not here anymore. And so the big thing that I have always wanted my girls to know is I often call it, because a teacher said this to me a long time ago, this is your earth walk. You are here on the earth for this time, or this is your soul school. And then when you're not here anymore, you're maybe not on the earth anymore, but there's other things, and I don't know what they are.
Well, and then there's that quote, we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
This is our human experience.
For some reason, whenever I think of like, I don't know, universal expansiveness, like I just got back from Alaska with my oldest daughter, JC, and you don't know what I experienced when I was looking at the mountains and how many mountains there are in the state of Alaska and how big they are and how small I felt. And then we stayed in this cabin. There's this river and all the water was being fed from the snow melt from these mountains. And I'm just like, it's just, I seem so small compared to all this. And then when I think of the earth being so small in comparison to the vastness of the universe, like there's so many different layers of
smallness and vastness,
complete awesomeness.
Yeah.
And so that's, I just keep, and as long as I can maintain that, the idea that I can't get my arms around it, and I don't think that what life is whatever's right in front of me, and there's actually a lot of other things going on that I don't understand, not supposed to understand, and will never understand, then I feel like I'm in a pretty good place when I'm in that mystery. My problem is I'm like, nope, this is what life is. It's work and it's family and it's dinner and that's it. So.
Yeah. And I think what you just said is the important thing is I think the mystery, ironically, paradoxically gives us peace, because then we don't feel like we have to figure it out. If you, and again, but again, this is why it's called Zen Parenting Radio. Zen is the, understanding that you never really know, everything is another riddle. Everything is another like layer. And as soon as I say you don't have to know, you get to live in the mystery, then that's when I want to get to work and start figuring it out. And then when I realize I can't figure it out, I live in the mystery. And then I'm like, ooh, but there's a universal sign. And then I go that way. So you get to play in the mystery. You get to like experience it and enjoy it. And there is no end to it. There is, and I will say, as far as like, I talk a lot about, the mystery of when people die and where they go. And yesterday was Father's Day. And so obviously I was thinking a lot about my dad, and I was looking at pictures of him in the morning, and I was like, ooh, like, okay, so I don't know if everyone can relate to this. Maybe I should just talk to you, Todd. But when I look at people or I'm with people, they have, I'm going to use the word energy, but I don't want you to get lost in that word. What I mean is when I think of my dad, there is a feeling I get, and I'm like, that's my dad. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. So like when I think of your mom, there's a feeling I get where I'm like, that's your mom. So I feel them when I think about them. And I had a moment yesterday, I told the girls this because it's so funny, where I was looking at a picture of my dad and I was like, I could feel him. And I was like, where is he? Like I had a, where is he? Not like, it was almost like I thought I had forgotten to go visit him or something. I forgot he wasn't in this realm.
Not on this plane.
Yeah. This, wherever we are. I was like, where is he? And I'm like, oh, wait, he's not here. Like I have to remember. Then sometimes I cry when I have that feeling. I cried this morning in meditation, actually thinking about some loss. But I was more like, oh yeah, he's not here, but I can still feel him. Like it's not always sad.
Yeah.
Because I know exactly what my dad feels like. When I think of your mom, I can feel her. Like and my mom, I can feel her. Yeah. Like I know. So I think some people when I use that word, sometimes they're like, oh, I can't relate to that. Try and think of your own word, like you remember what she smells like, or you can hear her voice or his voice. Like there's these things where we understand. And that's as much as I can really, so we're going back to talking to our kids about these things. These are the stories I share with my kids. I don't give them certainty stories. I have pictures of people who have passed that we love all over our house. In our kitchen, we have a picture of my mom, my dad, and Todd's mom, and we look at them every day. We talk about them all the time. They're in the ethers, they're in the air. We talk about our rabbit who died. We talk about our fish who died. We just keep them here. And that's as much as I can give my girls. I can't say, when they're like, they're older, so they don't ask questions about words like heaven or as much anymore. But I just try and think of those as words rather than absolutes. Like if that's a word that feels good to them, but they're around.
Well, and I just want to add, like, if your kids, whether they're 5 or 15 or 25, ask questions, I'm never going to tell anybody how to answer. Instead, I'll tell you how I answer. Mm-hmm. My answer almost always starts with, I'm not sure.
Right.
What happens when you die? I'm not sure, but I think blah, 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 blah. I tend to like really disconnect from somebody who tells me with certainty that they know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I want to pivot, and we may just want to spend a minute or two on this. The whole earth walk idea, and then whatever the spiritual walk, whatever we want to call it, the opposite of that is. Yeah. We have had some people in our lives that reside in the spiritual walk at the expense of the earth walk.
Yes, yes.
And I just wonder if you want to riff off of the idea that we can't forget that we're human beings breathing air that have to pay bills too.
So it was one of my favorite parts of yoga is that I used to do yoga. I had, I was a good student, I have been for 25 years. And then, and one of the things I felt like I was learning early on was this like detachment from the body. Like you want to be more spiritual, you want to get out of your body. And then when I started teaching yoga or going through teacher training, it just so happened I was learning a kind of yoga that it's not around anymore, but one of the best teachings was to be in your body, to practice embodiment. And I think this is more normalized now for yoga teachers. So if you're someone who's just gone through teacher training, you're probably like, well, yeah, but we didn't used to talk that way 20 years ago. It was much more of a separation. And now, the kind of yoga I learned was, no, be a human being. This is your time to be human. So don't separate from your body. Right. Don't try and be something above other people. Don't reside in this spiritual realm where you miss out on having a body. Enjoy food, enjoy sex, enjoy, hugging somebody, enjoy wearing clothes that feel good, enjoy putting a lotion on your skin. This is your body. And again, I'm not even getting into diet culture and weight. That's a whole other thing. I'm just talking about being inside a body. And that has always been really, again, another thing I've talked to the girls about is like, you get to feel these things. You get like, I love it when someone combs my hair, or if Todd rubs my feet, or, there's certain things that feel good to me. And I feel so lucky because I'm in a body and I get to feel those things. And I think a lot of somatic therapy is now catching up with these ideas, with that, somatic therapy being like that reconnection to what's going on inside of you, and like feeling things through, talking things through your body, that it resides inside of you, and making those connections where the mind and body have been separate. You're reconnecting. And this is, so to your point, Todd, I used to be very frustrated with writers, yoga teachers who would teach us that we need to be above our bodies. I think that's what you're talking about. And also people in our lives who have blind faith, things are just going to fall into place. They play the spiritual game and forget the body game.
Yeah. Like, no, you got bills to pay, and you got to go figure out how to pay those bills.
Thank you. That's where I wanted to go. And if you are a body and you are a human on this human walk, then you have to live as a human being, which means you live in a community, and you live in a home, and you have to mow the lawn, and you have to pay your bill, and you have to, do good things for people. You don't get to just be like, I'm so spiritual, I don't have to do these things. You need to show up as a human being.
And there's times when you can get lost in the spiritual realm. Great,
For
go
sure.
ahead. And
I
there's
have.
times when you can get lost in the human realm. And that's where I usually get lost. And I think if there is an answer to this, it's like, make sure that you're paying attention to both.
And I think that Todd and I hold hands through this. I think I've gotten very lost in the spiritual realm and have more of a propensity, is that a word?
Sure.
To do that, because that's a very soothing, connected place for me. I feel very in my element, but Todd holds my hand and keeps me on the earth. And I think with Todd, he can be so
sweetie,
earthy.
You lift me off the ground.
I say, yeah, I'm kind of like, Todd, look up, and I don't mean, you look at the stars just as much as I do, but recognize what you don't understand.
Speaking of looking up, my friend Mark Miller texted me this morning and wants us to consider doing Up for pop culture.
Oh, I love Up.
And I even thought about that. And
we should see if my Aunt Peg wants to do it with us.
Yeah, let's get Podbear on here.
She's the biggest fan.
Yeah, and I totally sidetracked here, but the first 10 minutes of Up might be the best 10 minutes of movie cinema history.
That's human, man. The first 10 minutes of that movie is just a human experience.
Yeah.
And the spiritual nature of it is the love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The being there. Like, so someone may look at that and be like, well, that's all in the human element, but the reason it's meaningful, the reason we can feel it. Well, let me go back to the AI, the Chat GPT. And I know you're saying I can heighten it and it can all of a sudden become kind of humanish, but I was saying I was asking it for words and it gave me words, but they were empty words.
Yeah.
They didn't feel like anything. Yeah. Then I kind of reshaped them, put my personality into them, took this word out, changed this word. And all of a sudden it was like I filled up a balloon. It was like, now this was an empty balloon and now I'm in it. Yeah. Now, and that's the same thing with the beginning of Up is it's like, even though it's a cartoon, you feel the love between these two people.
Well, and for me, like the whole spiritual piece, for me, like that's heart center stuff for
exactly.
me. Just love, attraction, relationships, partnership, courtship, that like I know we're wired for procreation and all that, but there's still like something really spiritual about the whole idea of that we're still on this earth. Kind of crazy.
Well, and dig into, I don't understand what you mean.
I don't even know what I mean. I just feel like
we should be extinct.
No, well, that's one thing, obviously. There's plenty of reasons why you might say that we probably should be, based on how some of us are acting towards this earth, towards each other, everything else. But I don't really know. It's just because I think the thing is, you talked about the body and to reside in it. And my thing is the one part of the body that is not on the earth walk is the heart. Even though the heart pumps blood, but the heart also creates intimacy. It creates affection for one another in a way that just seems mysterious to me.
When you say it's not on the earth walk, what do you mean?
I think my kidneys and my feet and my brain and all these other things are here for my earth walk. And I feel like the heart, not the one pumping in my chest right now, but instead my love for you or my love for our kids.
You mean the energy of connection.
Yes.
It's not just the organ,
correct,
the heart, but
correct.
You mean, well, as you know, Todd, as a trainer for the Institute of Heart Math.
Yes.
That's something Todd and I used to do.
I think my certification expired about 8 years ago.
Well, one of the things that we learned from the Institute for Heart Math, we used to work with them, was the fact that the energy of the heart, like the lengths, the amount of what would I say? The energy that emits from our brains is not as much as the energy that emits from our hearts. So, and I'm saying this from do you understand what I mean?
The electromagnetic field around your heart is much larger than the one around your brain.
So when we think we're thinking beings and we connect through thoughts, yes, like you can't deny that. But really the way we connect is through this like energy around our heart. Yeah. And I think that our ability to tap into that more, to talk about embodiment, to trust what your body is feeling, but you can't trust what your body is feeling if you're disconnected from your body. So this is why some people will say, I have no idea what you're talking about. One of my husband. Okay. So I'll just talk about you, Todd.
Yeah. Talk about me for a while.
Todd, about a month and a half ago, hurt his ankle playing pickleball, or he thinks he did that way.
It's 2.5 months ago, and it was my Achilles tendon, but go ahead. I'm not keeping track of dates,
right.
But it's been 10 weeks.
It's been a while. He then had to focus on the healing of it because he was going to Alaska with JC and he just wants it to heal in the right way. He's being very smart, but he's been incapable of moving the way he really wants to move. I feel a different energy from Todd, and I have since this happened. Now, when I say that, I don't mean there's something wrong with him or he needs to change it or anything like that. I know he's not at his top layer of energy. Mm-hmm. I know it. And someone would say, well, how? What did he say? What did he do? I have no idea. I can just feel him around me. And it's like almost like I can, when we look at our computer and we see the battery power, mm-hmm. Todd's battery power is like 82%. So he's still doing all the dad things. It's not that he's disconnecting. It's not that. It's that he's not where he wants to be.
Right.
And I can tell.
It's like, from what energy am I doing these things
Exactly.
from?
And that is not, I think some people be like, what are you talking about? From the surface, it looks the same. I can feel him. I can feel that with my children too. I can feel it with people that I walk by in the library. It's exhausting. Mm-hmm. Like you can be, that you can feel these things. And I believe that's a heart energy.
Yeah.
I think there is that kind of connection. So these are things, going back to the title of the show, that I talk to my kids about. My 3 children are very different and they look at things differently. They handle life differently. They have different skill sets. These kind of beliefs intertwine in their lives in different ways. They do not all speak the same language. They do not all interact with the world in the same way, but there is this underneath foundation that I believe they trust in.
Yeah.
And that underneath foundation is that the universe has their back. It also is that things go wrong. Don't be surprised.
Yeah.
Because hitting walls is how we then course correct. That because the universe has your back, there are times that you're going to hit a wall. Something will not work. And can you look at it through the lens of, after you've tried it a bunch of different ways? Because again, I'm not saying one hit against the wall means give up. But if you're like, wow, this isn't working, that maybe there's something there. And I don't simplify it. I don't say, well, see, the universe has protected you, move on. I say, this is mysterious, right? So maybe there is something in this that we should consider going a different direction.
I have, as we get close to closing shop here, 2 resources. Remember the book Life's Operating Manual by Tom Shady?
Oh, so good. So good.
And then he also did a documentary called I Am.
Yeah.
And in that documentary, it has in the book, it has all these kind of like just really interesting ways, experiments that don't back up by scientific reason. It's like,
or they actually do.
Well, remember when he's connected to the yogurt, or they're doing the yogurt experiment?
But that is scientific. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't make sense. So what happens is they throw a bunch of images in front of this guy, in front of this yogurt, and they have these testing things.
They got it connected
inside the yogurt to see what type of energy is being emitted from this, I guess,
looking at
inanimate
pictures.
Substance.
Yeah.
But the guy looking at the fun pictures and the scary pictures is not connected to the yogurt itself. Yet the yogurt is carrying different energy based on what the person is observing in front of him.
Yeah. Well, isn't this the thing is like, if
the double slit experiment?
The double slit experiment. Yeah.
He talks about that as well. And he's got like 6 or 7 really good, interesting examples of spirituality, heart essence, whatever word you want to use. But yeah, the double slit experience is basically, and I'm not a scientist, but basically the act of observing something changes the properties of that thing.
Exactly.
And if nobody's looking at it, then it acts one way. But if somebody's looking at it, then it acts differently. And it's I think they're like measuring beams of light or something like that.
So basically what Todd is saying is he's talking about experiments and, he's showing illustrations of how there is mystery.
Yeah.
And how does this make sense? Even though Todd's like, this isn't scientific, it is, but it's not science that we focus a lot of energy on.
Right.
And this is why it's the only thing I didn't love biology. I didn't love chemistry, but I did like physics because it had a spiritual nature to it. You know, there were things about it that are mysterious, you know, why? And we don't get to know why. We just get to live inside of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, as this is a very cliche thing to say, so I'm owning that, but you know, life is not about answers. It's about asking questions. You know, you're always, you know, staying curious about what's going on. I have like 50 other things on this list.
Well, maybe we'll do part 2 next week.
I was going to say like we obviously talked about embodiment, but I wanted to talk about initiations and rituals because that's a huge part of helping our children understand a more spiritual, self-aware nature, recognizing coincidences. I wanted to talk about this. Can I finish with this?
Sure.
Because a lot of parents talk to us about yoga and meditation. How do I get my kids to do yoga and meditate? Okay. So because I was doing yoga teacher training when my girls were little, they were watching that. So they knew I was doing yoga all the time. And you don't even have to do teacher training. If you're doing yoga in your house or going to classes or there's yoga mats around, they know what yoga is. You know, they're watching, and Todd does it all the time too, or he used to. And so they see it. Sometimes we would invite the girls to do classes with us. Todd and I used to teach family yoga and, you know, we'd invite them and they'd sometimes come, they sometimes wouldn't. But basically it was more of a role modeling of here is something that helps me. Here is access to a mat. A couple of years ago, Skylar and I started doing yoga every morning because it was really helpful to her and stabilizing. She doesn't do that anymore, but she still does it occasionally. And what I noticed, because now that my girls are older and have been through the stages, they have picked it up when they've needed it. Like instead of doing PE, both JC and Cameron did yoga class instead of doing a regular physical education. And now sometimes Cameron goes to yoga classes on Saturday morning. This is without my influence at all. These are things they've figured out for themselves. And it's the same with meditation. You don't force your kids to do these things. You role model it. You offer them ways to do it. You create a place in their room to meditate. You say, let me help you with that if they want it. But they will, if they see it as an option that has worked for you and your partner or you, they will then become more interested. But if you don't do either of them and you tell your kid to do it, it doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, sweetie.
Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that there's a lot there. And I think if we want, maybe we'll go with part 2 next week.
I like it.
If we so choose, because there's, you know, I don't even know where I would start with all that. But in closing, I just want to say, we did not talk about Team Zen, but if you as a listener want to spend more time with Cathy and I, we do these Zen Talks twice a month. We also send out fuzzy socks or t-shirts.
So warm.
And if you want to be in a community of about 95 or so other amazing moms and dads, please join us. It's $20 a month, 25, I forget. 25 bucks a month. So just scroll a little bit and you will find the sign up and you can cancel at any time.
It's an app and there is a lot there, man. Yeah. I just, you know, I know we don't have time, but I just got off Twitter again because Twitter makes me sick to my stomach sometimes. And I just love our app. Yeah. Like I love scrolling through it. I love putting stuff on it. It's just a more optimistic place to be.
Boom. Cathy had wrote a book called Zen Parenting, Parenting Ourselves and Our Children in an Unpredictable World. You can pick that up wherever bookstores are sold.
Absolutely, everywhere.
And then I am also a one-on-one coach for guys and also lead a international virtual men's organization called menliving.org or Men Living. So go to menliving.org. So we'll see you all next week. And I guess keep on trucking, right?
You bet.
And don't forget to breathe.